What is honor for a medieval knight? The answer was simple. It was found on the battlefield, forged in the heat of combat, in service to a king and a kingdom. But what happens when the battlefield no longer has a place for you, when honor can no longer be won in a glorious charge? The knight did not abandon his obsession with honor. He simply changed the arena. He turned it inward, making it personal, private, and infinitely more dangerous. This is the story of how the grand theater of war was replaced by the deadly ritual of the duel. We will explore how the knight's quest for glory devolved into a pathological obsession with personal reputation, a game with bizarre rules, and a bloody price. Part 1. The Empty Battlefield. As we've seen in this series, the great battlefields of the late 15th and 16th centuries were becoming increasingly hostile to the traditional knight. The roar of cannons made charges obsolete, and disciplined ranks of infantry with pikes and firearms rendered individual heroism almost meaningless. War was becoming an impersonal industrial process. There were fewer and fewer opportunities for a knight to win glory in the old-fashioned way. The grand sweeping battles that defined the 100 Years' War were being replaced by protracted sieges and skirmishes, dominated by professional soldiers and artillery. This created a profound crisis of purpose for the knightly class. They were a caste of elite warriors trained for a type of glorious combat that largely no longer existed. Their primary function had been stripped away, leaving a void. And into that void, a new, more personal definition of honor began to fester. Part 2. The Rise of Personal Honor. When a knight's public value as a warrior declined, his personal reputation became everything. His honor was now the most valuable and most fragile commodity he possessed. Society, particularly among the nobility in countries like France and Italy, became a tinderbox of perceived insults and provocations. This was the dawn of the affair of honor. A stray comment at court, a questionable glance at another man's wife, a dispute over a game of cards, even something as trivial as being jostled in a hallway. Any of these could be interpreted as a stain upon a gentleman's honor. And in this new hypersensitive culture, there was only one way to wash that stain away with blood. The duel became the ultimate arbiter of social standing. To refuse a challenge was to be branded a coward, leading to social ruin. To fight and win was to affirm your status and your manhood. The duel was no longer just a method of settling disputes. It was the central performance of a nobleman's life. Part 3. The Science of the Duel. This new obsession gave rise to a new industry, the art and science of dueling. This was not a street brawl. The duel of the Renaissance was a highly formalized ritual governed by a complex and often bizarre set of rules and etiquette. A new class of professional fencing masters emerged, particularly in Italy, who taught the nobility the deadly art of the rapier. The rapier was a weapon perfectly suited for this new age. Unlike the heavy-cutting broadsword of the battlefield, the rapier was a light, fast, and precise thrusting weapon designed for unarmored one-on-one combat. Dueling manuals like those by masters such as Achille Marozzo or Rodolfo Capoferro became bestsellers. These books were intricate textbooks of death, detailing hundreds of guards' feints and killing blows. The duel had become a deadly science, a new kind of battlefield with its own tactics and masters. This new culture of honor was supposed to be a civilized way of managing disputes, but in reality, it often devolved into pointless bloodshed over the most trivial of matters, creating a cycle of revenge and violence. Part 4. The Absurdity of the Code. The Duel of the Mignons. To see how pathological this culture of dueling had become, we need look no further than the infamous Duel of the Mignons, which took place in Paris in 1578. The story begins with a trivial argument. One of the favorites, or mignon, of King Henry III of France made a disrespectful comment about a lady who was involved with another nobleman. That was it. That was the spark. A challenge was issued. The two men, along with two of their friends, each acting as seconds, agreed to meet for a duel. According to the rules, the seconds were only there to ensure a fair fight between the two primary duelists. But the code of honor had become so twisted and so extreme that the seconds felt their own honor was at stake. They too drew their swords and began to fight each other. The result was a bloody, chaotic massacre. By the end of this honorable duel, over a petty insult, 4 of the 6 men lay dead or dying, including 2 seconds who had no part in the original argument whatsoever. The king himself was said to have wept bitterly over the loss of his favorites in such a pointless display of vanity. This duel perfectly illustrates the absurdity of the situation. The knightly ideal of honor, once about protecting the innocent and serving a greater cause, had decayed into a narcissistic obsession with personal pride leading to a bloody and meaningless slaughter. So as the knight's role on the battlefield faded, his sword did not rest. It was simply moved to a different arena. The grand, chaotic stage of war was replaced by the small, ritualized theater of the duel. Honor turned inward, becoming a fragile, explosive thing that needed to be constantly defended against the slightest perceived insult. The duel was the last refuge of a dying warrior class. It was a desperate attempt to prove that their courage, their skill, and their unique status still mattered in a world that was rapidly passing them by. They created a new game for themselves, but it was a game where the stakes were just as deadly and the reasons far more trivial. This exploration of how ideals can become twisted and corrupted over time is a key part of our journey. If you believe these complex stories of human nature are worth telling, show your support by hitting the like button. And to ensure you are there for the final acts of this grand historical drama, subscribe to The Knight's Journey and ring the notification bell, because history teaches us that sometimes the most dangerous battle is the one a man fights to protect his own pride.